Welcome back, everyone. It's the Bourbon Judge.
All I got is bourbon.
Welcome back, everyone. It's the Bourbon Judge. Welcome back, everyone. It's the Bourbon Judge. We are back at it with a hot brand. Yes, Black Maple Hill is back. Yes, Black Maple Hill is back. I am excited personally. So this is gonna be a fun episode, right? So when I think about Black Maple Hill, truly, it was the rise, there was the fall, and there's the rebirth. So we're gonna get into it. So we're gonna go through I'll call it a history lesson with the Bourbon Judge. Is that fair? All right. So super quick, high level. Let's start with the rise of Black Maple Hill. So in the early 2000s, Paul Joseph started a brand called CVI Brands in the early 2000s. And this is, at that point in time, he was truly a non-distilling producer. He was an NDP. And even though many years before there were NDPs, obviously, he's not the original. But this was before the whole bourbon boom. So of the recent bourbon era, he truly was one of the more original NDPs of the recent bourbon era since the early 2000s, right? He was sourcing whiskey at that point in time. And at that point in time, he was sourcing older, like very older aged whiskey, primarily from Stitzel Weller, from Heaven Hill, and a few other respectable Kentucky distilleries as a whole that had, obviously older vintage whiskey available for sale, right? Because again, this is early 2000s, like 2002, 2003. There was a ton of bourbon available and a ton of older bourbon available as well, right? Because there was no boom. So he was sourcing it. At that point in time, again, sourcing older vintages, there ended up being a huge following for the original, I'll call it Black Maple Hill. Looked just like this. And I mean, when I say huge following, like people fell in love with the original Black Maple Hill, right? We're talking like 22-year-old old vintage Stitzel Weller Heaven Hill whiskey. Of course, I mean, come on, seriously, right? So it had a huge following. People loved it, right? So that was the rise. Did that for many years. He was doing very well for let's call it 10 to 12 years. And then there was the fall. So what happened, Judge? What happened? Like everything else, right? It can only last for so long. So about 2014, 2015-ish, all of those older vintage stocks kind of ran out, right? So the depleted inventory ran out, and or the distilleries weren't selling it to him anymore. Maybe they were keeping some of it for their own releases and so forth. But for the most part, a lot of those older vintage releases like the Stitzel Weller and so forth ran out. Like any other businessman, and I get it, Paul Joseph decided to partner with Stein Distillery out of Oregon. And that's when you think back, and I'll find a picture so you guys can see it. That's when you went from this bottle design to the little shorter bottle design, the little smaller ones, different color labels. There was the green and the blue and so forth. But long story short, the shorter bottle design, that was completely different whiskey. That was whiskey produced by Stein Distillery out of Oregon. And it was only aged 4 years. And there's nothing wrong with whiskey's aged 4 years. But when you go from 20-year-old, the original that was 20-year-old or 22-year-old, if you will, 20 plus, I'll say, down to 4-year, that is a major difference, right? You're going from Stitzel Weller and 20-year-old Heaven Hill to Stein Distillery, right? Big difference, right? 22, 4, huge difference. So unfortunately, the brand kind of lost the pill. People stopped buying it. Fast forward, let's call it the rebirth, where we are today. Yes, Rare Character has purchased the brand Black Maple Hill, and they're bringing it back. So really excited for this. When you think about Rare Character, what comes to mind? So a couple things. Number one, it's owned by co-owners Peter as well as Pablo. Everyone knows Peter. Everyone knows Pablo. And when you think of Pablo has a fantastic palate, right? A fantastic palate. He is a guru when it comes to blending whiskey as well. So just, Rare Character has such a strong brand itself. I have a ton of Rare Character bottles, right? And I mean a ton. Love Rare Character. So I'm really excited that they're bringing it back. Also, they're bringing it back where they're keeping true to the original Black Maple Hill, where it's each and every release that they have, and there's 3, they're always 95 proof. But what are the different ones, Judge? So you have the bottle design, which this is the bottle design, obviously. They're kind of reincorporating the original bottle design, so the taller bottle design. There is the black label. So the black label is 16-year-old Kentucky whiskey, Kentucky bourbon, proofed out at 95 proof, right? So 16-year-old Kentucky bourbon at 95 proof, MSRP $500. Now, granted, if you find it in stores, it might be more because we all know there is what's called greed and capitalism in America. And fortunately, unfortunately, liquor store owners might mark it up. There's also the blue label. The blue label is 11-year-old source Kentucky bourbon. That one has an MSRP of $200. Again, 95 proof. Same thing. If you find it in a store, it might be marked higher than 200 just because of, liquor store owners have that right to mark it up. Unless you're in a state-controlled store, of course, right? Last but not least, the one we're going to dive into today is the red label. Yes, the red label. So obviously, again, 95 proof. MSRP on this one, only $70. So I got it for MSRP, $70. Plus, obviously, tax. I didn't find it in my state, so had to pay tax. I think it was like $76, $77. The only difference of the other two is where the black label is 16-year-old and the blue label is 11-year. This one is non-age statement. So there is no age statement. But I would assume, and because it is Kentucky straight bourbon, that means it has to be at least 4 years old. My guess is that it's not only 4-year-old whiskey in here. I would assume Pablo probably has like some 5, 6, maybe even 7-year. I'm just guessing, right? Just guessing. We shall see. I've already poured this, let it air out a little bit. Let's dive into this one real quick. All right. Let's get into this. Real quick, before I dive into the nose, 3 quick easy favors. Number 1, hit the like button. Number 2, drop me a comment. Let me know what are your thoughts just on Black Maple Hill coming back. Let me know your thoughts on Rare Character as being the owner and what your thoughts are just in general about this new, I call it sub-brand coming from Rare Character. Last but not least, please make sure you all subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you get a notification each and every time I release new content. Cool? All right. Let's get into this nose. Ooh, very nice. So the first thing that comes out off the nose, tons of baking spices. This is like a, yeah, wow. Tons of baking spices, almost like an apple pie kind of a note. It's like an apple pie meets like maybe like some apples, some pears, some honey. Smidge, maybe just a smidge of rye in there, like some pepper kind of notes, if you will, some peppery, minty kind of notes. Wow, but a ton, and I mean a ton of like baking spices. Woo, very nice. All right, nice nose, very easy, very calm, very chill. Sweet, baking spices, apples, pepper, a little bit of honey, a little bit of mint. A very just kind of a chill nose. Not bad. Not bad at all. All right. Let's see if this bottle is worth the $70 price tag. Well, plus tax as well. $75, $76. All right. Here we go. Cheers. All right. Very clean off the palate. Very crisp. Crisp means like it has like a and I didn't get this in the nose, but I have it in the palate. That's interesting. Crisp meaning like it's very, wow, very peppery and almost like a orange peel kind of a note. I didn't get that in the nose, that orange peel, but in the mid end of the palate, wow, very oily too, very like kind of creamy almost in a way. In the mid end of the palate, I had almost like an orange peel kind of a note to it. So where in the nose, I had like the apple, the pear, the baking spices. I got all that in the mid end of the palate, but also what added in was like an orange peel, like a very citrusy orange peel, and then also like that pepper note as well. I got that in the mid end of the palate. Very interesting. Let me get one last little sip before we do a verdict real quick. Clean finish. Nice and clean. Very like soft, but not soft like in the bad way, right? At 95 proof, it's a very clean finish. I love the combination of the apples, the pears, the baking spices. That citrus notes kind of hit you. It gives you like a little bit of a burst, if you will, like in the mid end of the palate. So even at 95 proof, it definitely holds its own. Very nice. All right. So, Judge, is this a buy, a do not buy, or something different? This, my friends, It is a split decision. Here's the reason why. I'm giving this a split decision because is it good from a quality standpoint? Do I think it's worth $70? I actually do think it's worth $70. It's really good, right? At 95 proof. I love the fact that Rare Character brought this back. We don't have the exact age statement. Not that you need the age on the red label, but it's a nice clean finish. It's an excellent pour. I gave it a split decision because at the $70 price range plus tax, you're getting closer to like $80, right? And those are some of the bottles I'm thinking in my head that if I'm in a liquor store, I might end up buying over this one because 70 with tax, 76, 77. Now you're almost at 80 bucks. But is it a good quality whiskey? Absolutely. It is really good quality. But it's not one that I think you need to run and break the bank for. And I know, unfortunately, even though I got it at MSRP, I know a lot of liquor store owners, when they find this and they get it into their shop, they're going to mark it up probably to like $100, maybe $110, and it's not that good from a quality standpoint. If you love Rare Character stuff and you want to just grab a bottle at MSRP, sure, you won't be disappointed. But don't also go into it thinking that this is the best thing since sliced bread. It is not that, to be crystal clear. Very good, but not the best thing since sliced bread. All right, my friends, as we say in this courtroom, peace, cheers, most important, salute. Take care. See you guys.